34-year-old Nicholas Finley now is charged with capital murder after detectives say he robbed and killed his 29-year-old girlfriend, Marshana Struggs. It happened at the park at Cumberland Apartments on July 19th.
This lady was running for her life through the apartment complex. Her heart was beating so fast she could barely breathe. Gunshots were going off behind her. 29-year-old Marshana Struggs had made it to a neighbor's truck. She was pulling on the door handle, hoping and praying it would open.
The neighbor tells me she did not know Marshana Struggs for very long, but she says she was beautiful and kind. She says the moment she heard gunshots, she feared for her friend's life.
Yesterday,
bullet holes are found on Shawnee Drury's front door.
Here's something that's right here. They're all of them are right here.
Her doorstop is where Marshana Struggs was shot and killed while trying to run from her boyfriend, Nicholas Finley.
For just a moment, she thought she might get away. Then Nicholas Finley showed up with his gun, and everything changed forever. What you're about to hear is the scary, true story of how jealousy, control, and greed turned a relationship into a death sentence. This is the story of Marshana Struggs, a young mother whose only mistake was saying no when her boyfriend demanded her hard-earned money. She was making good money through her OnlyFans account, but her boyfriend Nicholas Finley couldn't handle that. He wanted her money. When she refused to give it to him, he decided she wouldn't live. She tried to hide. She tried to run. She even made it to someone's truck thinking she was safe. But Finley wasn't done with her yet. What he did next shocked an entire community and left a little boy without his mother.
Drury recalls how it unfolded.
His lady got pulled over, and he needed her to bring the insurance card. And so my roommate took her to go down there, and he wasn't there. So when they came back, he was sitting right here in her car, and she jumped out and had a confrontation with him, and he shot her a couple times because he kept saying he was going to kill everybody in the house. He was going to kill us for helping her.
Drury says Struggs fought to get away.
She made it into my truck, I guess, and he shot her 4 or 5 more times over there, and then she managed to make it over here at that point, and he shot her like 8 more times. It was just so senseless, so senseless.
Before we dive into this heartbreaking case, I want to ask you something that might save a life. Have you ever seen the warning signs of domestic violence in your community? Drop a comment below and let me know what state or country you're watching from. Your awareness could be the difference between life and death for someone you know. Welcome to Crazy Dark Files. Please like this video, share, and subscribe to this channel to help raise awareness and spread caution. Let's begin. Marshana Struggs was so much more than just another news story. She was a real person with real dreams, real struggles, and a real love for her family. At 29 years old, she was trying to do what millions of single mothers do every day: provide for her child and build a better future. Marshana wasn't originally from Houston. She had made the big decision to pack up her life and move to Texas with her young son. This wasn't just about changing cities, this was about changing their entire future. Her sister Kimani would later explain why Marshana made this move. She had just moved to Houston, Texas to try and give her and her son a better life. Think about that for a moment. Marshana was willing to leave everything familiar behind: her friends, her family, her comfort zone, all because she believed Houston could offer something better for her child. That takes courage. That takes the kind of love that only a mother understands. As a single mother, Marshana knew how hard it was to make ends meet. Rent, groceries, childcare, clothes for a growing boy, the bills never stop coming. Traditional jobs often don't pay enough to cover all these expenses, especially when you're doing it alone. So like many young women today, Marshana found a way to take control of her financial situation. She started an OnlyFans account. Now, before we judge her for this choice, let's remember that she was a mother trying to survive. She was using what she had to build something better for her family. And it was working. Marshana was making good money from her online content. real money that paid for real bills and gave her real independence. This wasn't just about the cash, though. For Marciana, having her own income meant having her own power. She didn't have to depend on anyone else. She could make her own decisions about her life and her son's future. She could pay her own rent, buy her own groceries, and plan for tomorrow without asking permission from anyone. The people who knew Marciana in Houston saw her as more than just her job. Her neighbor, Shawnee Drury, didn't know her for very long, but she could see what kind of person Marciana really was. Shawnee described her as beautiful, kind, and a loving mother. These weren't empty words from someone trying to be nice after a tragedy. These were honest observations from someone who had seen Marciana in her daily life. Marciana was the kind of person who made friends easily. She had what people call a social butterfly personality. She was outgoing, friendly, and genuinely cared about the people around her. Even though she was new to the area, she was already building connections with her neighbors. That's not easy to do when you're a busy single mother, but Marciana made the effort. Her family back home could see the changes in her too. The move to Houston was giving her hope. She was excited about the possibilities. She would talk about her plans for her son, about the opportunities that Houston could offer him as he grew up. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was actually building something. But there was one person in Marciana's new life who didn't see her success as something to celebrate. Someone who looked at her independence and saw it as a threat. Someone who believed that her money should be his money simply because they were in a relationship. That person was Nicholas Finley, and his jealousy over Marciana's financial success became deadly, because in his mind, a woman who could support herself was a woman who didn't need him. And if she didn't need him, then what was stopping her from leaving him? The answer to that question would cost Marciana everything. Nicholas Finley was 34 years old, 5 years older than Marciana. On the surface, he might have seemed like just another guy, but underneath, something dark was growing. Something that would turn deadly when he realized he couldn't control the woman he claimed to love. We don't know exactly how Nicholas and Marciana met, or how long they had been together. What we do know is that their relationship was built on a dangerous foundation. Nicholas saw Marciana not as an equal partner, but as someone he could control. And when she started making her own money, that control began to slip away. The problem started when Nicholas found out about Marciana's OnlyFans earnings. She was making good money, really good money, money that gave her independence, money that meant she didn't need to depend on him for anything. And that's when Nicholas showed his true colors. Instead of being proud of her success, Nicholas became jealous. Instead of supporting her hustle, he became angry. In his twisted mind, Marciana's money should be his money too. Not because he had earned it, not because he had helped her build her business, but simply because he was her boyfriend. This is where things get really ugly. Nicholas didn't just ask Marciana to share her earnings, he demanded it. He felt entitled to the money she made from her own work, using her own body on her own time. When she said no, he couldn't handle it. Think about how crazy that is. Marciana was working hard to support herself and her son. She was being responsible, paying her bills, building a future. But Nicholas saw her success as his failure. He saw her independence as a threat to his control over her. The fight started getting worse. Nicholas would pressure her about the money constantly. He would make her feel guilty for not sharing what she earned. He would act like she owed him something just because they were together. This is called financial abuse, and it's one of the most common ways that abusers control their victims. Financial abuse doesn't leave bruises that people can see, but it's just as damaging as physical violence. When someone tries to control your money, they're trying to control your life. They want to make sure you can't leave them, because you can't survive without them. But Marciana was stronger than Nicholas expected. She kept saying no. She kept refusing to give him control over her earnings, and that made him angrier and angrier. The warning signs were there. Neighbors talked about hearing loud arguments coming from their apartment. The fights were getting more frequent and more intense. Nicholas was becoming more aggressive about the money issue. He couldn't let it go. What Nicholas didn't understand is that for Marciana, this wasn't just about money. This was about her freedom. This was about her ability to take care of her son without depending on anyone else. This was about having choices in her life. Every time she refused to give him her earnings, she was really saying, "I don't need you to survive." And for a controlling man like Nicholas, that was the worst thing she could possibly say. The situation was getting dangerous, but Marciana probably didn't realize just how dangerous. She thought she was dealing with a jealous boyfriend. She didn't know she was dealing with a man who was willing to kill rather than lose control. Nicholas's demands became more aggressive. The arguments became more violent. He was escalating, and Marciana was running out of options. She could give in to his demands and lose her independence, or she could keep fighting and risk everything. She chose to keep fighting. She chose to protect her right to control her own money and her own life. It was a brave choice, but it was also a deadly one, because Nicholas had already decided that if he couldn't have control over Marciana's money, then nobody could. If she wouldn't share her earnings with him, then she didn't deserve to live to spend them at all. Before we continue with this story, I need to ask you something important. Have you ever seen someone try to control their partner's money, maybe demanding access to bank accounts, or getting angry when their partner works or makes their own money? These are serious warning signs of abuse. If you recognize these behaviors in your own relationship or someone else's, please reach out for help. Financial abuse often leads to physical violence, and it can be deadly, because that's exactly what happened to Marciana Struggs on July 19, 2024. On this day, it all began with something that happens to drivers every day: a traffic stop. Nicholas Finley was driving Marciana's car when police pulled him over. We don't know why he was driving her car or what the traffic stop was for, but what happened next set everything in motion. Like most people in that situation, Nicholas needed to show proof of insurance to the police officer, but he didn't have the insurance card with him. So he did what many people would do. He called his girlfriend and asked her to bring it to him. When Marciana got the call, she probably thought it was just a normal favor. Her boyfriend needed help with a traffic stop, and she had the insurance card he needed. It seemed simple enough. Her roommate even offered to drive her to where Nicholas was supposed to be waiting. So Marciana and her roommate got in the car and drove to the location where Nicholas said he would be. But when they got there, something was wrong. Nicholas wasn't there. The man who had just called asking for help was nowhere to be found. Confused and probably a little annoyed, Marciana and her roommate decided to head back to the apartment complex. Maybe Nicholas had already handled the situation with police. Maybe he had gone home. They had no way of knowing that something much worse was waiting for them. When they pulled into the parking lot at Park at Cumberland Apartments, they got the shock of their lives. There was Nicholas, sitting in Mariana's car. The same car he had supposedly been pulled over in. The same car he had needed the insurance card for. How had he gotten back to the apartment so quickly? How did he have her car if he had been pulled over? None of it made sense. And Marciana knew something was very wrong. What happened next was witnessed by Shawnee Drury, Marciana's neighbor, who was about to see something that would haunt her forever.
So when they came
According
back,
to
he was sitting right here in her car.
Marciana jumped out of her roommate's car and immediately confronted Nicholas about what was going on. The argument was loud and intense. Neighbors could hear the shouting from inside their apartments. But what came next shocked everyone who witnessed it. He shot her a couple times, Drury later told reporters. Just like that, a simple argument had turned into attempted murder. But this was only the beginning of the horror that was about to unfold. Marciana was wounded, but she was still alive, and she knew that if she stayed there, Nicholas would finish what he had started. So she did the only thing she could do. She ran for her life. A young mother, bleeding from gunshot wounds, running through an apartment complex, while the father of her child chases her with a loaded gun. This wasn't a movie or a TV show. This was real life, and it was happening in broad daylight in front of multiple witnesses. Drury watched in horror as Murcianic ran through the complex, desperately looking for somewhere safe to hide. "She made it into my truck, I guess, and he shot her." 4 or 5 more times over there, Drury recalled. Even wounded, even after being shot multiple times, Murcianic kept fighting for her life. She managed to get out of the truck and continued running. She was probably calling for help, probably praying that someone would save her, probably thinking about her son and how much she wanted to see him again. But Nicholas wasn't done. He was hunting her like an animal, determined to finish what he had started. Then she managed to make it over here at that point, and he shot her like 8 more times, Drury said. Let that sink in for a moment. Nicholas Finley shot Marshalla Struggs a total of 13 times. 13 separate times he pulled the trigger and sent a bullet into the body of the woman he claimed to love, the mother of his child, the woman who had trusted him with her life. Drury was hiding in her bathroom during the shooting, terrified that Nicholas might come for her next. "I just had my hands over my head and it was so loud. I thought he was coming in the house because he kept saying he was going to kill everybody in the house. He was going to kill us for helping her," she remembered. Think about how terrifying that must have been for everyone in that apartment complex. Children were probably hiding in their rooms. Everyone was wondering if they were going to be next, but Nicholas wasn't interested in anyone else. And when she finally collapsed from her wounds, unable to run anymore, he stood over her and made sure she was dead. According to Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, Nicholas stood over her and shot into her body with a pistol and unloaded gunshots into her. Even when she was down, even when she was no longer a threat, he kept shooting. This wasn't just murder. This was execution.
Sheriff Ed Gonzalez says murders involving intimate partners make up 35% of the murders in unincorporated Harris County so far this year.
When the shooting finally stopped, the 29-year-old mother who had moved to Houston to build a better life for her son was lying in a parking lot, her dreams destroyed by 13 bullets fired by the man she had trusted. But Nicholas wasn't finished. After killing the mother of his child, he decided to add insult to injury. He grabbed Marciana's purse and stole her car, the same car that had started this whole nightmare. Then he drove away, leaving her body behind like she was nothing. The woman who had refused to share her hard-earned money with him was now dead, and he was stealing what little she had left. It was the final act of control from a man who couldn't handle the fact that his girlfriend was independent and successful. When police arrived at the scene, they found Marciana's body riddled with bullets. Neighbors were traumatized. Children had witnessed violence that would stay with them forever. And somewhere in Houston, a little boy was about to learn that his mother was never coming home. Nicholas Finley had gotten his revenge, but his freedom wouldn't last long. When the gunshots finally stopped echoing through the park at Cumberland Apartments, silence fell over the complex. Neighbors who had been hiding in their bathrooms and bedrooms slowly began to come out. Children were crying, adults were shaking. Everyone was trying to process what they had just witnessed. The 911 calls started pouring in immediately. "Shots fired at park at Cumberland Apartments. A woman has been shot. The shooter took off in a car." Within minutes, police cars and ambulances were racing toward the scene, their sirens cutting through the afternoon air. When the first responders arrived, they found a scene that would stay with them forever. Marshalla Struggs was lying in the parking lot, her body riddled with bullet holes. There was nothing the paramedics could do. She was pronounced dead at the scene, just steps away from the apartment where she had been trying to build a new life for herself and her son. The crime scene was massive. Bullet casings were scattered across the parking lot, marking the path of Nicholas's deadly chase. Bloodstains showed where Marciana had tried to hide, where she had fallen, where she had made her final stand. Investigators had to interview dozens of witnesses who had seen or heard parts of the shooting. But Nicholas Finley wasn't going to get away with murder. While he thought he was clever stealing Marciana's car and driving off with her purse, police were already on his trail. In today's world, it's almost impossible to disappear completely. There are cameras everywhere, cell phone tracking, and witnesses who can identify vehicles. It didn't take long for law enforcement to track him down. Nicholas was arrested and taken into custody without incident. The man who had been so tough when he was shooting an unarmed woman suddenly became very quiet when faced with armed police officers. The charges against Nicholas were serious: capital murder. In Texas, capital murder is the most severe charge you can face. It means the prosecution believes the crime was so heinous that the defendant could face the death penalty. The fact that Nicholas was charged with capital murder instead of regular murder shows just how brutal and calculated his attack on Marciana was. When Nicholas appeared before a judge, he was denied bond. That means he would have to stay in jail until his trial. The judge looked at the evidence: 13 gunshots, multiple witnesses, theft of the victim's property, and decided that Nicholas was too dangerous to be released back into the community. The impact on the neighborhood was devastating. Shawnee Drury, who had witnessed the entire shooting, was traumatized by what she had seen. She had tried to help Marciana by letting her hide near her truck, and now she was dealing with survivor's guilt and the horror of watching someone die right in front of her. Other neighbors were struggling too. Parents had to explain to their children why there had been so much screaming and shooting. Some families were considering moving away because they no longer felt safe in their own homes. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez understood that this case was about more than just one murder. He released a statement that put Marciana's death into a larger context. Intimate partner violence is a national epidemic. Here locally in unincorporated Harris County, intimate partner murders account for about 35% of all murders this year. Think about that statistic for a moment. More than 1 out of every 3 murders in Harris County involve someone killing their romantic partner. Marciana wasn't just unlucky, she was part of a pattern of violence that was destroying families and communities across America. Sheriff Gonzalez continued, "Love shouldn't hurt. It's important to recognize the signs of abuse and take action against violence against women." Her murder wasn't just a random act of violence or a crime of passion. It was the predictable result of warning signs that were ignored, red flags that were missed, and a system that failed to protect her when she needed it most. Let's talk about the bigger picture here, because Marciana's story is happening every single day across America. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez revealed a shocking statistic. In Harris County alone, intimate partner murders make up 35% of all murders. That means more than 1 out of every 3 people who get killed are murdered by someone they loved and trusted. This isn't just a Houston problem. According to national statistics, 3 women are killed by their intimate partners every single day in the United States. Every day! That's more than 1,000 women per year who die simply because they were in a relationship with the wrong person. But here's what makes Marciana's case even more tragic. Experts say that leaving an abusive relationship is actually the most dangerous time for victims. Chanika Brown from the Houston Area Women's Center explained it perfectly. Leaving an abuser can be the most dangerous time. When abusers realize they're losing control, they often escalate to deadly violence. This is exactly what happened to Marciana. She had her own money, her own independence, her own power. She didn't need Nicholas to survive, and that terrified him. When she refused to give him control over her earnings, he decided that if he couldn't control her, nobody could have her. Financial abuse is one of the most common forms of domestic violence, but it's also one of the most overlooked. When someone tries to control your money, they're really trying to control your life. They want to make sure you can't leave them because you can't afford to survive without them. The warning signs of financial abuse include demanding access to your bank accounts, getting angry when you work or make money, hiding financial information from you, or feeling entitled to money you earned yourself. If any of this sounds familiar, you need to know that it's not normal and it's not love. But there's another factor that made Marciana's situation even more deadly. Nicholas had access to a gun. Chanika Brown shared a terrifying statistic. If an abuser has a gun in the home, lethality can increase by 500%. 500%. That means having a gun around makes it 5 times more likely that domestic violence will turn deadly. Think about that. Nicholas might have been angry and controlling without a gun, but he probably wouldn't have been able to kill Marciana with his bare hands. The gun turned his rage into a death sentence. So, what can we do to prevent more tragedies like this? First, we need to recognize the warning signs. Controlling behavior, jealousy over money or work, isolation from friends and family, and threats of violence are all red flags that shouldn't be ignored. Second, we need to support victims when they're ready to leave. Shanika Brown explained that whenever we have survivors call our hotline, we focus on safety planning. Sometimes they need to know what to do. They may not necessarily be ready to leave their abusive situation, but we always want to make sure that they know how to leave, what they can do in the meantime to maintain their safety. Interestingly, Brown also mentioned that calls to their hotline increased significantly after Hurricane Beryl hit Houston. Isolation is a big contributing factor for domestic violence incidents, she explained. When people are stuck at home together with no way to escape, tensions can explode into violence. Here's what I want you to do right now. Think about the people in your life. Do you know someone who might be in an abusive relationship? Have you seen the warning signs but didn't know what to do? Share this video with them. Share the hotline numbers. Let them know that help is available and that they don't have to face this alone. Because the next Marciana Strug might be someone you know, and your awareness could save their life. Marciana Strunks was 29 years old when she died. She had dreams, plans, and a little boy who needed his mother. She moved to Houston to build a better life, and she was succeeding. She was independent, strong, and determined to create a future for her family. But all of that was stolen from her by a man who couldn't handle her success. Nicholas Finley took away her dreams, her future, and most tragically, her son's mother. That little boy will grow up without the woman who loved him most, all because his father couldn't control his jealousy and rage. Marciana's story doesn't have to be meaningless. Her death can serve as a wake-up call for all of us to pay attention to the warning signs of domestic violence and to support the people in our lives who might be in danger. If this story has touched you, please like this video and share it with others. Subscribe to Crazy Dark Files for more true crime stories that matter. And most importantly, if you or someone you know needs help, don't wait.